go for enter bush. They go for inside bush.
So as this thing be so they don't run or go for bush.
Yes.
So now wait till where they don't burn out for you, madam. Tell me your thing the way they don't burn out.
Yes, my own problem run too much. I did so they become they shoot my husband. After they shoot my husband, me and Pikin they suffer. After me and Pikin they suffer, the time she don't for house because my husband be big in me house. I dey stay for day. After that, they come point the house. I don't know place where me and Pikin they fit stay now again now. My own suffer for the crisis, it not too much. It not too much.
So they burn your house so wait till remain for them, mama.
Nothing.
Okay. Yeah.
The issue on the Anglophone piece, I won't go into detail on that. I think the article plus the video this morning did a very good job of explaining the history of how it got to the point where we are today. In October of 2017, when it came kind of to a head, the Anglophone states said we want to actually form our own state, the Ambazonia state. There have been issues there with atrocities, issues with allegations of law of war issues, and this is something that it brings all this to a head. Over the last several months or so, the State Department has put on hold several security force assistance programs.
My people of the Southern Cameroons, some houses were burnt down close to a village around Ndonga Manto. As you can see in that footage, those people don't have a place called home anymore. They are sleeping in the bushes. And as you can hear in that woman's testimony, prior to that incident, the husband was shot. This is the conditions our people are going through. And that is why reset is very, very important this year. We are going to cover this story extensively because it is said historically for the past 9 to 10 years, it is not the conduct of Amba fighters burning houses. It's not something consistent with their pattern. The Cameroon military is known for burning villages, not the Amba fighters. We are not pointing fingers at anyone because these cases will be investigated properly. But this is a hint. Historically, Amba fighters are not known for burning villages. Recently, I came across a verdict from the military tribunal in Yaoundé regarding the Ngarbuh massacre. It is said that some of the soldiers were given 5 years in prison, others were given 10 years in prison, others 8. We are going to properly analyze that in this video as well. Also, there is good news for us if we press reset and do things the right way. More than 60 years after the UN launched its former decolonization drive, pay attention to that keyword, decolonization. So I've been preaching about this for more than 2 months on this platform, visited the United Nations to verify, and now we are following the process gradually. And you've heard 2 weeks ago, the UN launched a decolonization drive. So the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, on Monday urged renewed commitment after 60 years to completing the unfinished business of ending colonial rule. Pay attention to the keywords, decolonization. I've been preaching on incomplete decolonization on this platform for more than 2 months before visiting the United Nations in January. In February, they are talking about reopening the decolonization files. Do you understand? We are going somewhere. I won't beg people to contribute. If you don't feel like financing this project, please go donate to whoever you please. When things are not working, you can come over here. This is going to be a slow process for many. But I have dug deep into our story and our history, our legal records, trusteeship files, to understand this case in depthly. So I'm not guessing here. So if you are in doubt, go follow the Ambazonians. If you are in doubt, go somewhere else. Go contribute there. When things stop working, you can come over here. We are looking for the 3 to 5% of builders that will build Southern Cameroons. That is our goal here. Full stop. So for more than 60 years after UN launched its former decolonization drive, Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Monday urges renewed commitment to completing the unfinished business of ending colonial rule. This video is going to be an eye-opener for you, because as we explore some contradictions or confusion within the Cameroonian justice system in relation to Southern Cameroons, we are also going to explore some of the contradictions within the Ambazonia narrative. It is very important that as we press reset, let's make sure we are in alignment when it comes to every aspect of our story. We will listen to this video some more and then we'll dive deep into that. Take a look.
There was never a United Nations trust territory called the Southern Cameroons. It never existed. Show me in the archives where you find that.
You heard Professor Carson Anyangwe saying there was no United Nations trust territory called Southern Cameroons, that you should show me in the UN archives. Yesterday, I received a message coming out of some WhatsApp groups, and I thought it is important that I clarify this point. Because there is what we call academic gymnastic. People can play with word, play with history, and keep you all in the loop. So what we do is build frameworks, realign the core objective, and make sure people don't derail us and we keep looping around and around. And this is what has happened with us for 65 years. Now, if someone says there was never a United Nations trust territory called British Southern Cameroons, show me in the archives. We lock that frame. Now, this is what is happening in WhatsApp groups. Now, a professor is explaining how before Southern Cameroons and Northern Cameroons were split apart, we used to have British Cameroon. In other words, what he's saying is before we had Southern Cameroons and Northern Cameroons, we used to have British Cameroon, and there was no Southern or Northern Cameroons. When we move the frame, we can create a narrative to justify error. What we require is open apology for statements like this. It is misleading. We had the mandate system or the mandate era. That is from 1922. When Germany lost World War I, all their territories abroad came under a mandate system, under the League of Nations. That is from 1922. So we had the mandate system. That is where we had British Cameroons. It is said that Britain had to split up Northern Cameroons and Southern Cameroons for administrative purpose. Now, under the United Nations, that is in 1945, after Germany lost World War II, the trusteeship system was created. These colonies that were under a mandate system were moved into this trusteeship system after World War II under the United Nations. Time frame. If someone can play with historical timeline, what we call academic gymnastic, they can go back to the time of Gaul and say, oh, Gaul changed their name to France. And so Southern Cameroons, a UN trust territory with an incomplete decolonization status, can change their name to Ambazonia. Doesn't that make sense? In that case, we can also say, let's go back to the German era. There was nothing like British Cameroon. If we say, oh, there was nothing like the United Nations trust territory called Southern Cameroons, and then they ask you, oh, what are you saying? We can see all these records, these trusteeship records. We can go into the United Nations archives and we see exactly that it is written Southern Cameroons. And then you're like, oh no, let's go back to 1922 and we look at the records. You will see nothing like Southern Cameroons there. I can say, oh, let's even go back. Let's go back to the German era. You see nothing like British Cameroons there. Okay, let's even go back. If we go back before the colonial era, before 1884, there was nothing like Cameroon, the German Cameroon that we know today. We can even go back before the German era and say there was nothing here like Cameroon with K. So you see, when we don't lock things into context, if you are smart, you can play with people for 10, 15, 20 years, and they will never realize what is going on. An open apology for saying something like this, because we have a serious case here. And if we can play with words like this, it is hard for you to consistently keep your story straight and file a good case that can help your people, because you are confused all by yourself. You have a lot of internal contradictions with context. Does that make sense? Now, we will talk about the Cameroonian justice system. I just wanted to draw your attention to that. Lock that frame. Let's keep listening.
Court cases. We've had at least 4 court cases. 2 in the United States. 1 in the Human Rights Committee in Geneva. 1 in the United States and 1 in Banjul. What are people talking about? And these cases, we've often, the challenge of these cases are two types, which many people don't realize. The first challenge is the issue of jurisdiction.
When you are confused about historical timeline, you have issues with jurisdiction. Because the question you should ask is, who conducted the plebiscite? The United Nations. You've solved the problem of jurisdiction. He's admitting that they are struggling with jurisdiction. This is huge. People just listen to it and then they slide and they scroll to the next thing. But this is huge in law. That means you can have a land case in Mancon, and then you are going to Nkwen Palace to solve that problem. The proper jurisdiction is the Mancon Palace, if this is a case that you want the customary system to handle. So he's saying they are confused as to where to go with this court case. That is, we have a land dispute in Mancon, and they are confused, so they will go to Nkwen Palace. But the palace that has jurisdiction over this case is the Mancon Palace. I want to bring it home so that everyone understands what he's saying. Let's keep listening.
Territorial jurisdiction and subject matter jurisdiction, which is very, very important. And the second one, of course, is framing the case.
And then what he just admitted is they are struggling with subject matter. So the confusion is, did your father pass away and leave this land to you? Is it an inherited property? So what are you writing about? What is the subject matter? Was it a land that you bought? So they are confused whether we should take this case. The land case is in Mancon. We don't know whether we should go to the Mancon Palace or we should go to Nkwen Palace. We all know that the proper jurisdiction is the Mancon Palace, because we are using customary laws to solve this problem. If you take that problem to Nkwen Palace, the fund of Nkwen, the council at the Nkwen Palace, can't solve that problem. They don't even know the land. So if you file a petition in any other court than the Mancon Palace, you won't get a verdict. The Nkwen Palace will just dismiss that case because they don't even know what you're talking about. So he's saying they have issues with these areas. It is huge. Now they don't know what to write about. This is a situation of incomplete decolonization. You've heard the UN General Assembly bringing up cases that has to do with decolonization. This happened more than 60 years ago, and they are bringing it up today. Not up to 3 months that I've been talking about incomplete decolonization. I told you God raises people for a time like this. I said it before the United Nations is saying it right now in February. And that is our case. Jurisdiction. Let's keep listening, but lock that frame in as well. Lock that frame of the struggles they are facing with this case. Pay attention to this.
Because you don't just go to court and throw things, we discovered that we don't have a treaty of union, so therefore court decide whatever thing you want. And they work according to a certain strategy, like what I just mentioned.
Let's listen again to the Ambazonia strategy, because they brought their expert, that they have a strategy for the people of that territory. So let's listen to their strategy, and then we will come back to the verdict ruled by the Cameroonian military tribunal over the Ngarbuh massacre. Let's take a look.
Why would they want to take over territory? That's not their business. Let the enemy run the territory to pay the people. We don't have the money. In any case, we don't have the personnel to move ought to be fighting to turn out to go and start being GOs and prefect and governor. The enemy should pay those people, they should be managing those people, while we concentrate on making life difficult for them, to the point where at one point they give up and then go. So I'm quite happy that things have changed. It's no longer the same.
Because when this belligerence draft,
that is their strategy. There is no time frame. Again, if you went to school and they told you just keep studying, the day you get it, you graduate. Are you going to enroll? That there is no time frame that you go to primary school, you spend 7 years in primary school, you spend 7 years in secondary school, 3 or 4 years in university. No, just keep studying. The year you get it, you graduate. Because there is no strategy. Now, they picked up the idea of the missing union treaty, because this is the Ambazonia strategy. If they hear an idea, it is good, they just clip it, they tag it somewhere, they don't even know what that means. That is why they heard about the missing union treaty for more than 65 years. They didn't know what to do with it. No, just know it. I know it. It is like somebody who is hungry and they knew they had a bag of rice at home. Then they are complaining that I'm hungry. And then you remind them that you have a bag of rice. The person says, I know, but you are starving. Say, yes, I'm starving. Do you know you have a bag of rice? Yes, I knew I had a bag of rice. Do you know what to do with that rice? No, I don't know what to do with that rice. Do you want to cook jollof? You want to do stew? But I knew I had a bag of rice, but I was starving and I'm dying. And I don't know what to do with that bag of rice. What it would take to fix this problem. You knew it all. But you did not just know what to do with the information. It's like those who went to school, graduated, have a degree, but all they are looking for is a job. They don't know what to do with that degree. They don't know how to start a business with that degree. So at the end of the day, it is worthless because you don't know what to do with it. Now, experts will look at that same bag of rice. A good cook will look at that same bag of rice and tell you, we can do jollof, we can do stew. There are many things we can do with this rice to help you have food. And that is the difference between I knew there was no union treaty versus this is what you do with a situation that has to do with a missing union treaty. Does that make sense? Let's keep listening.
on, just like it has dragged on in other situations. Of course, you end around the negotiations table. And when we are on that negotiations table, an internationally mediated settlement, that is when the issue of the Treaty of Union comes in. Because at that point, you will now be wanting, before international law for La République du Cameroun, to prove its ownership or to justify its presence on our territory. Not just by the fact that there was some plebiscite. Because that's when the issue of the non-existence of a Treaty of Union comes in. I don't know if that makes, if that puts it clearer for those.
That is where the Treaty of Union comes in. Again, it's like saying, I want to travel to America. I know I need a visa. I will not process those documents. I'll pay my flight. When I get to the airport, then I will process my visa right there. Imagine that. That is exactly what it sounds. Why? Because they don't want to admit they don't know. They don't want to admit they are struggling with these issues of which Prof has highlighted, that they are struggling with jurisdiction, they are struggling with subject matter, and they are struggling with framing. This is a different generation. If you stand with us, you will be blessed. If you try to fight us, you will get crushed. And the little respect you would have had from the community, you're going to lose all of that. This is just my message to the elders. This is the generation you can't just manipulate, confuse with rhetoric like this. I know this is not something authentic to you. The way you're saying it, it doesn't come from someone that understands what they are saying. And I'll further show you why. Let's keep watching.
Those who are still in doubt.
That one and the right of self-determination.
Do that research, come back here and challenge.
And this is where the problem started. When I heard his interpretation of the plebiscite question, I knew every conclusion will be wrong. So I'm questioning their conclusions. Oh, Britain sold us. Do you have proof? No, I don't have proof, but what are you saying? Do you have proof? Can we see the documents? Do you understand? Just the way he stated the plebiscite question. Not even interpret, just state the plebiscite question. I knew every conclusion will be wrong. Every strategy they have will be off. They will be improvising in the process. You can tell when people have a strategy compared to those who don't. Let's listen.
Me, and I know that I definitely didn't do my job properly. The importance of each event. This is very important for us to note. So now let's get into those dates. On the 11th of February, 1961, the people of the Southern Cameroons are consulted in a referendum to determine whether when they achieve independence, they would like to join with the already independent Federal Republic of Nigeria, or they would like to join with the already independent Republic of Cameroon. Get the condition very well. Upon achieving independence, who will you like to join with? Because the British...
Upon achieving independence. Let me help you understand. In legal matters, words matter, framing matter. Everything does matter. Context matter. Because Prof said this has nothing to do with historical continuity, citing God. Now, this has everything to do with legal continuity. If we all agree that there is no union treaty, then this process is incomplete. So there is legal continuity, not just historical continuity. We lock that frame. And then with that, we will be careful about what we say and how we structure this case. Keep listening.
Said that the Southern Cameroons did not have enough resources to self-sustain as a state on its own. And so, yes, they will achieve independence, but they should be encouraged to join.
They added another word, encouraged, to join. Do you understand? This is how they twisted the word. What I found out with discover, and made discover to be the subject. Talked about what I wore to the United Nations. When we have our traditional events, people dress a certain way. You put on your traditional regalia so that your dressing matches that event. So if you're going to the United Nations, you dress a certain way so that what you're putting on matches that event, matches that mission. Let's keep listening.
But they must have to join with another country so that they pull together resources and be able to better survive. And so therefore, they ask the people of the Southern Cameroons, when you achieve your independence, who would you like to join? That was in February. Now, in February, the people of the Southern Cameroon decided that when we achieve independence...
This is interesting. When we achieve independence. So by is a mechanism. That question is a block. You can separate it. It's the same logic that when we finish fighting, and then we will talk about the missing union treaty on the negotiation table. Same logic. Based on how he states this question, his interpretation of this question will tell me his conclusion. When we gain our independence, we are encouraged to join after we gain our independence. Hence, once we finish fighting, and then we will bring up the issue of the missing union treaty at the negotiation table. See the same logic? This is what would have been done in 2017. We raised the issue of the missing union treaty. We established a legal foundation. Even if the situation escalated to armed conflict, we would have been fighting based on this legal foundation. Because at the end of the day, when everything is said and done, we will come back on the table to have conversations. What are we going to be talking about when this legal foundation is missing? Because of his understanding of the plebiscite question, his interpretation of the plebiscite question, he will always arrive at that conclusion with every decision in the struggle. When you gain your independence, that is why they celebrate October 1st, when we have a situation of incomplete decolonization, because they all agree that there is a missing union treaty. So the process was incomplete. Why? Because plebiscite, check. Resolution 1608, check. So the process began. The process was never completed properly. Umban Constitutional Conference does not meet the standard of paragraph 5 of Resolution 1608. An exchange of note between Britain and La République du Cameroon does not meet the standard of paragraph 5 of Resolution 1608. So we don't even get into the federal system of government, the unitary system of government. We don't even get into that. We stop right there. Why? Because all these events indicate that the assignment in paragraph 5 of Resolution 1608 was never fulfilled. If you know what that means, if you understand the intricacies of this case, you will never celebrate October 1st. You will celebrate the plebiscite day in our own way to let the world know that we all understand that a process began here and was never completed. Instead, we skip that and then we celebrate October 1st. So this is not consistent with someone that understands the missing union treaty. This is not consistent with someone that claims they knew they had a bag of rice at home and knew what to do with it, and yet they are starving. This is not consistent with someone that claims they understand the missing union treaty, and yet they want to bring that up after a war. Let's keep listening.
Take note of this. When we achieve independence, which means the first condition, the precondition to joining is the achievement, the attainment of independence. Then
you can never be more courageous on error like this. The courage on error in our society is out of proportion. Let's keep listening.
Independence vote was not a formality because achieving independence was a precondition to the joining.
And then this is what happened. When I questioned his conclusions, how he stated the plebiscite question, his interpretation of the plebiscite question, because my goal is to raise the standard of our people, make sure that our history is authentic and consistent. And then his vision, Somaliland, a poor, struggling nation, poorer than Cameroon. And yet they are trying to persuade their brothers and sisters that work for La République du Cameroon to leave their jobs to join them with a vision to build a nation like Somaliland. When they got hit, saw my UN's visit, oh my God, they went and brought their expert. And he came and said, there is no United Nations Trust Territory called Southern Cameroons. Now he's defending himself in WhatsApp groups. This is our people. Admit, I don't know. I'm limited. I have the words, but my understanding is limited. It's okay. It's okay. This desperation is a classic proof of how La République du Cameroon has had us trapped for 65 years. All they have to do is wait for us to fumble like this, and then they capitalize on it. You guys thought I will be emotional? No, I just watch you make all the mistakes, and I highlight it. The only difference is I'm not using a gun. I just show you how you play into the hands of the enemy. How your own misguided ideas and the desperation to prove yourself always get you trapped. This is how La République just stays quiet, watch you make these mistakes, and then they lock you in. And I'm trying to free all of us. Remain calm. We are too emotional. Calm. I grew up in an era where I saw men in our society. Today, I'm confused. I'm confused. People are too emotional today. Let's keep listening.
I hope it's clear.
Unfortunately, on 1st of October, you used the draft to declare federation and unification. We did not finish and must come back.
We did not finish and we must come back. Incomplete decolonization. Get that from Fonja. He was representing us after working for that government. For those who claim, oh, they work for that government. What about Muna? They all work for that government. But that is what Fonja is saying after working for that government. We did not finish. Whatever happened afterwards, if it did not meet the standard of paragraph 5 of Resolution 1608, we must come back. And hence, you've seen the United Nations opening up these files after 60 plus years. There is no statute of limitation. And for those who are wondering, does the name Ambazonia, as we press reset this year, use the name Southern Cameroons? Does the name Ambazonia and the mission has any effect on Southern Cameroons? And what signal is the international community picking up from Southern Cameroons for the past 9 to 10 years? Let's take a listen to that, and then we will analyze everything.
On that, I think the article plus the video this morning did a very good job of explaining the history of how it got to the point where we are today. In October of 2017, when it came kind of to a head, the Anglophone states said we want to actually form our own state, the Ambazonia state. There have been issues there with atrocities, issues with allegations of law of war issues, and this is something that it brings all this to a head. Over the last several
This is what the international community is saying, that in 2016, you broke away and said you want to form a new state called Ambazonia. So it is not their job to interpret everything about our history. Whatever you show up and tell them this is who you are, this is the cause you are pursuing, they will try to support you, spread that message around based on what you said. You have to study and tell the world, this is really what we are dealing with. So regardless of how long it will take, if you present your case as secession, they will treat it as such. Whereas we have a very good case, really good case, that if addressed properly, will find freedom within a very short period of time. Especially now that the United Nations is raising up issues like this. Now, let's analyze the whole thing. Let's begin with the verdict from the Ngarbuh incident. 3 soldiers were tried and sentenced inside the Republic of Cameroon's own court for crimes committed against civilians in Southern Cameroons. Pay attention to this. You see how I tie everything back to the Missing Union Treaty, incomplete decolonization, and the actions of La République du Cameroon in Southern Cameroons. This is not final justice. Let La République du Cameroon know that and know peace. This is temporary. internal discipline by one party over its own people. This is international law. Pay attention to this. Why? Because there is no international binding union treaty between Southern Cameroons and the Republic of Cameroon. Without that treaty or international instrument, there is no settled legal relationship at the international level. Paragraph 5 of Resolution 1608. And when there is no settled relationship, one party cannot be the final judge. You can't be the final judge over actions committed against the other. Your court cannot give final ruling on this case. One party cannot be the final judge over actions committed against the other. La République does not have the jurisdictional power to preside over Southern Cameroons. This was a United Nations trust territory with an international legal personality. And for those who are still confused about the Vienna Convention, Article 6, it's clear. If a state has an international legal personality, they can sign a treaty. So these trials may exist for now. Oh, we've given some 5 years, some 10 years, some 8 years. These trials may exist for now, but they do not close the matter. They do not close the matter. So my people on the ground just keep documenting. When this process is properly addressed, responsibility will extend beyond foot soldiers to those who gave the orders. Because we are talking about the soldiers who took the lives of civilians in Southern Cameroons. Who gave the orders? Who gave the orders? So you see, this case is not closed yet. Who gave the orders, authorized the deployment, or normalized the violence in Southern Cameroons? That will require a neutral mechanism. Not La République du Cameroun being the final judge over this case. After the genocide in Rwanda, it did not just end with local courts. The international community had to step in. So La République du Cameroun cannot be the final say on Ngarbuh. And that includes the villages that have been burned right now. And those actions are not consistent with Amba fighters. Those who are giving orders for soldiers to go into Southern Cameroons and take the lives of civilians, you will be accountable. So this case is not closed yet. Paragraph 5 of the UN General Assembly Resolution 1608 was not designed to end inside La République du Cameroun. Something had to return back to the United Nations that gave the assignment. International agreement. An international binding agreement. It was not designed for an exchange of notes between Britain and La République du Cameroun. It was not designed to be bypassed by a constitutional conference at Fumban. Paragraph 5 required a completed arrangement involving the territory concerned. Because some said, oh, Fonja worked for that government. After he worked for La République du Cameroun, he's saying Amadou Ahidjo used a draft constitution to declare federation and a union. We did not finish, and so we have to come back. Even after 60 years, you've seen the United Nations is raising issues like this. And let me show you something. One of the 17 self-governing territory is Western Sahara in Africa. After 60 years. For those who thought, oh, if you went into the constitutional conference and you could not negotiate properly and the other party was stronger than you, oh, the case is closed, just move on. No. Not a constitutional conference. That is an internal arrangement That is why some go into the federal system of government. We don't even get into that. On what foundation was that federal system of government established? This is what international systems look at. The creation of the federal system, the dissolving of the federal system. You can only have these conversations among yourselves. You can have these conversations in diplomatic circles. One of those 17 territories is Western Sahara in Africa. After 60 years, their issue is being raised at the United Nations. And these self-governing territories have to do with Chapter 11 of the United Nations Charter. Ours is Chapter 12, Trust Territories. There were 11 globally. So we are in a better position than these 17 territories. And why? Because a process began already. We had the plebiscite, Resolution 1608 was issued. No international agreement returned back to the United Nations. Pay attention to this. If paragraph 5 is not fulfilled, everything stops there. That is why I said La République du Cameroon extended their administration into Southern Cameroons without documentation, without permission by the United Nations. So, we do not talk about federation, unity, constitutional systems, internal governance. We stop at the missing step, state formation. After plebiscite, we had a Resolution 1608. It was an assignment given by the United Nations. Go negotiate. What did you negotiate? Can we see that? Did it come back to the United Nations that this is what you negotiated on based on how you've chosen to live with each other? No, that did not happen. Again, remember, Amadou Ahidjo had the education equivalent to Form 3. He was a radio operator that got into politics. So they didn't understand state formation. John Go Foncha had the education equivalent to Form 5. Went on to obtain his teacher training license, got into politics. Most of them did not understand state formation compared to someone like Kwame Nkrumah, who studied abroad. That is why context and focus is important. Because people will say, oh, we have the right to change our name. And then you ask a question, who did that? Was this individual the government of Southern Cameroons? They say no. They go on to cite examples like Gold Coast. They go on to cite examples like Burkina Faso. And then you look at it, you say, these were colonies. We were a trust territory. Regardless, Gold Coast changed to Ghana through a recognized government. So is Burkina Faso. Territories like Eritrea or Kosovo, South Sudan, even Western Sahara, that their issue is being raised right now at the United Nations, never changed their name. So whatever justification people have based on the change of the name of this trust territory, it's wrong. Stop it. That's all I'll say. Stop it. Stop it. All these territories with issues never changed their name. Eritrea never changed their name. Kosovo never changed their name. South Sudan never changed their name. Western Sahara never changed their name. And now their issue is being raised at the United Nations. Do you see where we are going with this? Whether leaders like Foncha or Muna understood state formation or not is irrelevant. Intent, awareness, or good faith does not substitute for legal completion. If you understand what I just said, you won't go around debating a federal system of government in Cameroon or Muna or Foncha working for La République du Cameroon. Again, whether leaders like Foncha or Muna understood state formation or not is irrelevant. Intent, awareness, or good faith does not substitute for legal completion. International law does not run on sympathy. it runs on instruments. For those who thought Southern Cameroons were irrelevant, I could go in there and mention the name Southern Cameroons, and they respond to me. We had an international legal personality. If not, they would have discarded everything that I said. The United Nations could respond to me when I mentioned Southern Cameroons, not Cameroon. Do you understand? This is where people get lost. Why? Because they argue personalities instead of process. There is a distinction between personalities and process. So you see, all those people are dead and gone, but we are raising the issue today. And the statute of limitation is not over. When you understand this, you will change your narrative. Stop wasting time, because some of you will feel ashamed at the end of the day when this issue is resolved the right way. You have the right to remain silent. They argue personalities instead of process. They argue history instead of law. All this academic gymnastic that the professor, the learned professor, is doing is because he's confusing history with law. When you cite Gaul changing to France in a post-colonial era where we have the United Nations, you're confusing history with law. A territory with an incomplete decolonization, because we know there is no union treaty. So now all their followers, because I deal with leaders here, founders, I address their representatives or their spokespersons because they are representing that idea. Now, if Professor Carson Anyangwe is speaking, if Gojin Dinka was speaking on this idea, these are the individuals that I am addressing here. Foundation. Not people that are acting within the cage built by Gojin Dinka. I have questioned all the conclusions of Gojin Dinka, the founder of Ambazonia, that a union dissolved in 1984. So anyone that is following that vision, I can only debate with their spokespersons, because I've debunked his conclusion. And we have senior legal experts in the community that have confirmed what I have presented here on this platform. So you that have been following that idea, there is no way for you to come under Gojin Dinka and we have a meaningful conversation if you follow that idea without questioning it to begin with. So we save time. That is why I don't engage in debate with anyone that has been following the Ambazonia idea, because at the level of your founder, I've been able to question all his conclusions. They are not logically consistent. A union can't dissolve in 1984 if we have no union treaty. A marriage can't fail if we don't have marriage certificate and we are going to a divorce court. You have a problem with jurisdiction, you have a problem with subject matter, and you have a problem with framing. So I question all their conclusions. That is why when Professor Carson Anyangwe came up, I had to allow these individuals to slide and I address him. I'm looking for the founders because I know these people speaking, these talking heads, this is not authentically an idea that comes from them. And you can tell based on how they present it. How I defend my position here, you can tell that I'm in tune with this idea. So even at the United Nations, I can defend this. In any court on earth, I can defend this. Just like Gojin Dinka. So anyone that has been following Gojin Dinka, don't think, oh, you just emerge from there and then we can sit on the table and discuss on this issue like that. No, I can tell. It is not authentically your idea. You are a follower of an idea. Let the founder defend their position. Have you asked the question, why has Gojin Dinka been quiet for all these years? Find out why. He can speak. Find out why he has been quiet for 9 to 10 years over an idea he initiated. This is our story. Some would say there was no UN trust territory called Southern Cameroons. And when challenged, they suddenly jump backward into the mandate system. That is a different category. because we had the mandate system, then the trusteeship system. Under the mandate system, we had British Cameroons. Under the trusteeship system, we had Northern Cameroons and Southern Cameroons. So if we flatten everything, that is, you can run through this historical timeline, you can pick anything from pre-colonial history to post-colonial history, and then you create an argument. That is not helping our case because we have a defect, missing union treaty, legal continuity. The mandate system and the trusteeship system are two distinct legal eras. I'll be using legal continuity moving forward, not historical continuity, because we all agree there is no union treaty, so that we can save time. Legal continuity. Mixing them is like talking about smartphones in the 1700s. You can talk all you want, but the system that gives meaning to the example did not exist yet. So if we play that game, I can take you back to German Cameroon and say trusteeship didn't exist during German Cameroon. I can take you back before Germany and say colonial Cameroon did not exist. You can play like that. Have a good time. Mental gymnastic, academic gymnastic. I can take you back to pre-colonial civilization and say none of these systems existed. Now, what are we trying to solve? What is the problem we are trying to solve? Because if we can identify the specific problem we are trying to solve, then we can have context, legal continuity. That kind of argument leads nowhere. Context matters. Era matters. Legal framework matters. That is why we have the Southern Cameroons legal framework. Southern Cameroons legal clarity framework. No confusion. Colonies changed names when they became independent states. Gold Coast became Ghana. These were colonies, not trust territories. Southern Cameroons was a trust territory. United Nations, trust territory. Era, context, framing. It does matter. Rhodesia became Zimbabwe. These were colonies. Those were colonies, not UN trust territories. For those who were wondering, did America fight a war of incomplete decolonization in the 1700s? You see, context. Context matter. There was no United Nations in the 1700s. America was not a United Nations trust territory. That is why incomplete decolonization comes into the picture. Those were colonies, not UN trust territories. Trust territories with unresolved or supervised decolonization do not change their name. Do not change their name. This belongs to chapter 12 of the United Nations Charter. You don't change your name because name changes break legal continuity, not historical continuity. So if you look at Eritrea, you look at South Sudan, you look at Kosovo, none of them changed their names mid-process. If you don't understand that this is incomplete decolonization, if you don't understand the meaning of the missing union treaty, that is why you can make these changes. That is why you celebrate October 1st. That is why you have this mental glitch. The people who renamed Southern Cameroons were not the government of Southern Cameroons in international law. This is error. Apologize to the people. That is it. We should have little debate about this. International law does not deal with pain. Oh, our people have suffered. No, we know our people are suffering. But if their case was pursued the right way from 2017, and this Ambazonia idea did not come into the mix, the world would have heard us by now correctly. And even if this situation escalated to armed conflict, we would have maintained our legal frame. Missing Union Treaty, incomplete decolonization. I'm not for or against armed conflict. I want to be clear with that. But if this situation escalated to armed conflict, we would have maintained our legal frame. The world would have heard us by now properly. You've heard what that congressman said. 2017, we broke away and we said, oh, we are creating Ambazonia. That now became the story. Changing the name of a trust territory before completing decolonization confuses jurisdiction, subject matter, and legal standing. And that confusion, that one single confusion, has cost us almost a decade of being misunderstood globally. It has cost us a decade of being misunderstood globally. Full stop. The question was not, when you gain independence, will you then choose to join? That was not the question. From how you frame that question, again, every conclusion will be wrong. The question was, do you wish to gain independence by joining? Very important mechanism. The difference between an adverb and a preposition. When? By. That is not semantics. I've not done word games on us. You guys do that in a very archaic way. I haven't done that. This is law. It's not semantics. That distinction separates a mechanism from a sequence. If you get that wrong, you will celebrate October 1st as independence when paragraph 5 was never implemented. This is what we should pay attention to. It's like we know the fundamentals of Achu, that you need cocoyam and bananas. Fundamentals. And then somebody is talking about Irish potato and plantain as the foundation for Achu. We know that whatever you come out with will never be the Achu that we know. We are Ngemba people, we know Achu. If you start talking about Irish potato, not cocoyam, you start talking about plantain, not banana, we know whatever you will come up with will be wrong. We'll taste it and we'll tell you, no, this is not Achu. Fundamentals. So if you get the plebiscite question wrong, your conclusions will be wrong, your thinking will be wrong, your calculations will be wrong. And you'll be trying to justify that your entire life. So if paragraph 5 was never implemented, decolonization was never completed. Full stop. It's that simple. Now, some people say this is too old. It's been 60 years. That is false. There is no statute of limitation on incomplete decolonization. Rest with that. There is no statute of limitation for incomplete decolonization. Right now, the United Nations is actively reopening and addressing dozens of decolonization cases. It's happening now. And I laid this foundation in 2025 and then visited the United Nations in 2026. In January. And by February, the United Nations is raising up this issue. Something is happening in the spirit. So the United Nations is addressing dozens of decolonization cases, including more than 60 under review in different regions. Do you understand? So right now, the United Nations is addressing dozens of decolonization cases, including more than 60 under review in different regions. They've highlighted 17, and they are dealing with that now. United Nations, after 60 years. That alone should tell you something. Time does not erase unfinished legal process. I believe God raised me in a time such as this for this job. It's not a coincidence. That is why I give glory back to God. I did not know that the United Nations will raise this issue in February. That is why I told you, He will reveal the next steps. I don't know everything, but I immerse myself in studies and I'll follow the direction of truth. This is why this project matters. This is why we should have hope. And this is why plans that say, let's just fight, make the territory ungovernable, and figure things out later, that is recklessness, my brother. That is not a strategy. That is drift. Drift. Saying we will talk about the Union Treaty after the war is like saying I will decide whether I have a marriage contract after the divorce. Think about that for a minute. That is saying I will decide whether I have a marriage contract after the divorce. Put yourself in that situation and tell me what you're trying to do. You don't postpone the foundation and expect stability later. Let's just build a house. When it's done, we'll figure out the foundation. That's what I'm hearing. Build it, just build. So that is what you are doing. And what I am doing is different. So I propose a 2 to 5 years timeline. Theirs is infinite. There's no timeline. Just fight. When will the fighting stop? We don't know. Just fight. I presented to us a 2 to 5 years timeline. A defined phase 1. A clear budget starting with 100,000. Ongoing legal, archival, and institutional work, because the work is going on. Again, I said, if you don't believe in this process, go support them financially to continue like this. Maybe they have a plan that we don't know about. But from what I see, the actions can tell. I can tell if someone has a plan. That's why you see I'm not moved. They think they will rant on social media. I'll be, nah, when you've studied like this, you understand the case like this, you're not moved at all. I'm not blinking. So we are not waiting. We are working every day. Every day. That's why you see some days I'm not on here talking, because we are working. That is why institutions of Southern Cameroons must begin preparing their dossiers now. The next 2 months, we might need that. Prepare your dossiers. The institutions that existed before 1961 and after 1961. When the time comes, documentation will matter more than slogans. Do you understand, my people? If someone admits publicly that they are still struggling with jurisdiction, subject matter, and framing, then no case has been filed. Full stop. That is pre-case. Full stop. Any professor of law should understand that. Any judge should understand that. That if you are struggling with jurisdiction, you're struggling with subject matter and framing, then there is no case yet. You should not file. Pay attention to this. Courts in Banjul, Abuja, or Geneva do not have jurisdiction over a UN trust territory by default. That alone tells you how far off track the discussion has gone. So this year, 2026, let's reset. Reset on context, focus, structure. No more mandate trusteeship confusion. No more emotional shortcuts. No more celebrating milestones that were never completed. This 2026, we are informed now. We are engaged with international lawyers now. And this process will be done properly so that we can move forward with clarity and not noise. Do you understand, my people? Keep your contributions coming in. With all humility, what we are doing now has never been tried in the history of Southern Cameroons for the past 65 years. Share this video with a friend and a loved one. Click the subscribe button and the notification bell so that every time a video is uploaded on this platform, you will be the first to be notified. Until next time, remain blessed.
Southern Cameroons, crown of freedom, you have it. A first world nation in a third world continent, you have it. Put your mind to the process, cutting edge systems, you have it. With top tier strategy, I don't see us losing, you have it. With great institutions, one single vision, you have it. Make Africa stable for trade and worship, you